Hey, everybody. We are live. Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sue. And today I am delighted to be back with Bonnie Halpern-Felsher. And I am going to give you her bio. Bonnie is a professor at Stanford and the founder and executive director of Tobacco Prevention Toolkit, Cannabis Awareness and Prevention Toolkit, and Vaping Information Solutions and Interventions Toolkit. And by the way, the list of her bio is so much longer. She is out there advocating for our kids, fighting for change, and helping really just to give our kids a better life because right now they are suffering so much with vaping, which sounds so innocuous. So let's start with, do we have a vaping epidemic?
Well, good morning, Sue. We do. If you look at the data over the past few years, we've seen a significant increase in the number of adolescents and young adults who are using electronic cigarettes. In what we saw from 2017 to 2019 was a pretty significant increase. In just a one-year period, 78% increase in the number of high school students using e-cigarettes in the past month, 48% increase amongst middle school students. Since
What is
then,
that? So that's the increased number. What's the
the raw
how
numbers
many
are,
kids?
yeah, somewhere between 27 to 30% of adolescents, so about 1 in 3, just about. And I'll tell you that really the national numbers we think are underestimated because I go talking to students and to parents and educators across the country all the time, now virtually, but all the time. And you'll go into a classroom and talk to kids and they'll say, oh, it's about half of my friends who are vaping. So we think it's higher. Now, more recently, the numbers seem to be coming down. In 2019, they were around 20%. And 2020 to 2021, we're seeing the numbers go pretty significantly down to more like 15 to 10%. But there again, I'll tell you, those numbers were during the pandemic, where a lot of young people were home. And when they're home, they have less access. Vaping begins as a social event where they're vaping with their friends until they become addicted. Then, of course, they're going to continue using. And so during the pandemic, young people were home more. But what we're starting to see, and in our own data that we've collected, we're seeing about 40% of adolescents reporting using electronic cigarettes in the past month, and schools are reporting epidemic numbers again. So we're still really concerned about this.
Wow, so it's spreading faster when they're together because it's part of like a status, like we hang together and we vape.
We hang together, we vape, we share, which also increases your risk of COVID, which we've reported on before, but you're sharing your products, you're talking about the flavors, you're talking about how cool it is, you're talking about the marketing. So there's a lot of and some peer pressure when they're together, and you see less of that when young people are home.
Okay, so we did such a good job of convincing this generation not to smoke cigarettes.
We
Right?
did.
We were out there and we were working hard to show the damage that it causes, and vaping swooped in as like an alternative. This is not smoking cigarettes. So how do we convince them? How do we take the same strategy we used for cigarettes and put it toward vaping?
Absolutely. A lot of the strategies that worked with electronic cigarettes, first of all, were things like indoor air, clean air policies. So not being able to smoke cigarettes inside. And so you had less, the social norms of cigarettes changed. The other thing that really helped was like what the Truth Initiative did. They really showed that the tobacco industry were the bad guys, that the tobacco industry was trying to get young people to use and to get a lifelong smoker. And young people don't want to be duped. They don't want to be manipulated. They want to make their own decisions. So that really worked to be able to say, they're coming after you. And then, the lies that the tobacco industry was doing, saying that there wasn't nicotine, that they didn't add nicotine, that nicotine wasn't harmful, saying that they weren't advertising to kids when clearly they were, those were exposed. We're starting to be able to do that with electronic cigarettes, but it's taking a lot longer. I think we started earlier. It didn't take us 50 years to figure this out, but there's been such a groundswell of mismarketing, misperceptions. Oh, there's no nicotine, or there's nicotine, but it's just harmful water vapor, or it's flavors. It's just, no big deal. And so we're really swimming uphill on this. And we know, especially with the marketing that happened on social media, we adults didn't see it coming. We don't necessarily use social media as much as kids do. We didn't see these products coming. We've talked before, they're small, they're easy to hide. So it took parents, it took public health, it took us researchers a little bit longer to figure out what was going on. But I think we've got a groundswell where now people are aware, and we're really saying much faster, these are causing harm, we're concerned about it. And you know what? The industry are the same folks who were doing cigarette marketing, who were bringing these harmful chemicals to you before. They're the same ones who are bringing you e-cigarettes. So the more we can equate cigarettes and e-cigarettes, the more we can say the same things are happening to you as teenagers. I think we're going to be able to get them to listen.
Also, I feel like the evidence is so incontrovertible. Like, they picked flavors to get to teens. They marketed to teens. So if that's something that you saw with cigarettes, that kids really hated hearing that, we should amplify that message, right?
Absolutely. And we do that with a lot of the research and our curriculums that we do, is they're targeting you with the flavors. Honey doo doo, sugar booger, unicorn poop. Those are not things that we adults are interested in. But even like the jewel flavors of mango or mint or menthol, those are also there for kids. Now, do adults want flavors and like flavors? Certainly they're going, we all like flavors, but we don't, as adults, need the flavors. We don't need that starter to be able to enjoy anything that we're using. And when you're looking at the adult smoker, cigarette smoker, they're used to the tobacco flavored or a menthol and tobacco flavored. So they didn't necessarily need to switch over to a fun flavor, so to speak. Those were attracting our kids. And so
well, it also
do
sounds a little bit less toxic when
it's
you're
absolutely
doing something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know, and teens tell us in our research, flavors mask, when it tastes good, it masks the harshness. It masks how scary and bad it is. When you talk about tobacco and it smells bad, kids are going, well, this tastes good. This smells good. How could it possibly be bad for me? And the other thing is that the new formulas of the e-cigarettes that were started with Juul and continued, these salt-based nicotine flavors and formulas. The older e-cigarettes were more like cigarettes. They had free-base nicotine, very harsh on your throat. Kids don't like that. So you take a kid who's not been smoking cigarettes, they don't want that harshness on their throat. They take an older e-cigarette when they first came out, or a cigarette, and they don't like it. But the newer formulas are smoother. So you've got the smoothness, it doesn't hurt, it doesn't make you cough, plus the flavors, plus extremely high nicotine levels. It's not surprising that it's attracting kids, attractive to kids, and that then they become addicted so easily.
So do you think for parents, I just want to highlight this because to me it sounds like the biggest thing we can talk to our kids about, like maybe sit and do some research with your kids about how they're targeting, how they're marketing you and manipulating you for their future addict who continues to buy their product. Is that like number one on your list?
I would talk about that. Absolutely. I would. And not to promote our toolkit, it's free. It's out there. But, we actually have a whole lesson on marketing and how you can talk to young people about
Oh,
marketing.
so you've got one stop to what's your
If
URL? Tell us where to go find that.
It's tobaccopreventiontoolkit.stanford.edu. And September 1, we're going to be launching a whole new vaping prevention curriculum called You and Me Together Vape Free. And we're going to have a whole beautiful section on marketing. But I would also so definitely, I think parents, counselors, educators, talking to their children, their teenagers, and by the way, start young. We're seeing young people as early as third grade starting to vape.
Oh.
Start young because it tastes good. And they think it's candy. So talking about the manipulation, talking about, look, I say to kids, look, if I start attracting somebody in their 30s who isn't going to get addicted because our brains are done developing by 26 or so, not going to become addicted. Well, as a business plan, as a marketer, I'm not going to make a lot of money if I target somebody your age, my age, somebody in their 30s, because they're going to try and be done with it. If I target you at 16, I now have a lifelong consumer giving me money as an industry. So I think that's important. It's also important to
Such
talk about
effective marketing and so awful, so evil.
It is. It is. And talking to kids also about brains and their brain development, and we're trying to help you develop to be the best human being and to be doing the things you want to do. So let's not add in nicotine. Let's not add in a chemical that's going to actually change your brain and make it more difficult for you to become who you want to become. So not focusing on the negative, but focusing on, let's as parents talk to your kids about developing into them and who they want to be. And that's the other trick that really, not trick, but activity that works when we talk to our young people.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about, I think most of us are familiar with Juul. Juul is a brand, right? And it came out with vaping pens. Is that where it stopped? I mean, is this like we've got it, watch out for a Juul, or what's the story today?
I mean, today we're not seeing a lot of Juul use, and in some of our more recent publications that we've done, and national data have shown as well, teens have switched from Juul to Puff Bar, Views, Hyde. Gotta love that name, Hyde.
What was the third one?
Hyde.
No, before.
Views.
How do you spell it?
VUSE.
Uh-huh.
Flume, FLUM. There are a lot of new products out there. Now, a lot of them take the same look and technology that Juul did. So they're just a Juul knockoff or the next generation or next version of Juul. Some of them are bigger, but a lot of them still look like the Juul. But we have to be aware that there's, it's sort of the whack-a-mole idea. We're getting, dealing with Juul, now we're worrying about other products. So I think it's important when you're parents to talk to teens about the class of products. It's important to say, we're concerned about e-cigarettes overall or vapes overall. We're concerned about anything that you're inhaling and putting into your body that isn't air or isn't asthma medicine or something like that. And now we even have these non-nicotine e-cigarettes that you can vape melatonin, you can vape vitamins. And while, no, they don't have nicotine necessarily, they still have a lot of the same chemicals that we're seeing in nicotine e-cigarettes, propylene glycol, glycerin, flavors. And by the way, the flavors themselves are harmful to your lungs. Vaping or aerosolizing these chemicals into your lungs is harmful. So talking to sons and daughters and saying, yes, we're worried about Juul, but now we're worried about anything that you're vaping is a better message. Because now when we talk about Juul, kids are like, I'm done with Juul. That's not what's there.
Okay, so two questions on that. One is that, so how do I keep up with what it looks like, right? Like that it's changing. If I learned what a Juul looked like, I might dismiss something that looks like a ballpoint pen, right? How do I keep up with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, not to go to our website, go to others, go to the
That's
Truth
okay.
Initiative.
Plug your website. It's great. And it's all free.
It's all free. It's completely free. And we do free trainings for educators and stuff. So we're right now updating our fact sheet so parents can see what these new products look like. We have a new fact sheet on the non-nicotine products so parents can see what those look like. Truth Initiative, Parents Against Vaping E-Cigarettes. There are a lot of groups out there, tobacco-free kids, that have on their website what these new products look like. But I would say, talk to your young people and say, I always say, if you're listening to this podcast or you're listening to an interview or go to a class, say, I just heard about these things, Johnny or Sally. I want to know, going to your kids right after and saying, do you use? You're putting them in a corner, and that's just not a good approach. Better is to say, I'm concerned about these. I had just learned about them from talking to people. What do you think? What do you know? Hey, do you know what they look like? I'm curious. I would like your perspective on them. Ask them. Don't put them in the corner up against the wall where they're confused and they feel very targeted and attacked. But have that conversation with them. And then you could say, are you aware of these products? Curious what they look like. And then turn to, if you're using, I'm one who says we shouldn't come from a punitive approach. We need to talk and help. And the fact that teens are manipulated, the fact that this came so fast into the market with such hideable products and confusing products, that I say we need to take the perspective of helping young people. So, son, if you're using, I just want to get you some help. I'm not going to, of course we're going to be mad. We're parents. We're going to be frustrated, but taking that approach of how can I get you help? What can I do is a much better approach. So talking and just saying,
Does it work to say, do you know anybody? Like asking if they do it is very direct. If you said, do you know anybody who's using it, would that also?
Absolutely.
That would work. That would make them repel. Yeah.
Yeah. What I did as a parent is I would say, I'm not asking for names. I don't want to know who, but I'm curious if any of your friends are using. Have you seen this in your school? Often, if friends are using, then your son or daughter has tried. Not necessarily using regularly, but has tried. Not accusing, but it's often the case where groups are using these together, as we discussed a little bit ago. But absolutely, have you seen these on your campus? Ask if their school has done any education around it. What have you learned about it?
That's a great one.
Yeah, yeah. And if they haven't, if your schools are not doing it, parents, get the schools to start doing it. We're again happy to come out and do free trainings to the educators about it. But schools should be talking about e-cigarettes. I know that it's not, the same as talking about math or science, but it is disrupting classrooms. It's disrupting education. So
it's
getting
disrupting their futures. Like it's more important than math.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And if a kid is addicted, they can't concentrate in school. They're sitting, bouncing around and they're going through their withdrawal and they're getting up to go to the bathroom. It's affecting that kid and it's affecting the kids around them. So,
okay, we have a question from someone here, Missy. I don't understand how the brand Juul was outlawed, but not all the other brands.
It's a great question. So the way it wasn't technically outlawed, it's a great question, and it wasn't banned. What happened was, to be brief, all e-cigarette companies need to put in what's called a PMTA, pre-market tobacco application, to the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. And then the FDA has to authorize, not approve, but authorize the sale of that e-cigarette on the market. Thousands of e-cigarette companies put in PMTA applications, and the FDA is being very slow to go through one at a time. So there are very few products that have actually been authorized. Vuse Solo, which by the way is not the one teens are using. The one teens are using is Vuse Alto, and that one has not been authorized yet. And Enjoy, a couple others, and then they've given what they call marketing denial orders, which is not allowing them. So it's like outlawing, but not allowing them to be on the market. And then they have to come off the market immediately. That happened with Juul for reasons that we're not being told necessarily about. But then Juul the next day filed a lawsuit against, and a judge put a stay on it. So the stay basically saying that, okay, the marketing denial order does not go into effect yet, and that there's more discussion going on and more lawsuits and things like that. So right now, Juul is allowed to be sold in tobacco and menthol flavors only. So why not other e-cigarette companies? We are encouraging, all of us advocates are encouraging the FDA to review those applications quickly and put out marketing denial orders. And what I keep arguing is that, and we have papers showing this, rather than doing one product at a time, we need to be looking at the class of products. All e-cigarettes no e-cigarette out there should have flavors. No e-cigarette out there should be available to a young person to easily be able to get. No e-cigarette should be marketed, and should be really behind the firewall, so only adults who are smoking cigarettes can get. It's just, we have young people who are starting tobacco through e-cigarettes. It's not, and I actually work with a youth group. I was sitting in a room with youth the other day, and I said, am I right that it's not you saying, should I use a cigarette or an e-cigarette? What should I do today? No, e-cigarettes are not replacing cigarettes. That's not what's happening. Kids are starting with initiating with electronic cigarettes. Some of them are then moving to cigarettes, but it's not a harm reduction in terms of like, oh, this is better. It may be, but that's not where kids are going. It's e-cigarettes versus air, not e-cigarettes versus cigarettes. So that
oh
comes.
God, that's a big one. Okay,
Yeah,
Missy, thank you so much
yeah,
for your question. If
great
anyone else
question.
has any, put them in the comments. So in terms of melatonin and these other things that are being put into vaping, there's no regulation of them, right?
None. There's no regulation. Those non-nicotine products would not fall under the Center for Tobacco Products within the FDA. They actually can fall under the Consumer Protection Agency. And I've had conversations with them, as have some other advocates, really trying to get those products off the market or at least regulated. We published the first study looking at adolescents and young adults and adults' use of non-nicotine e-cigarettes. And we're looking at anywhere from 11 to 25% of young people using these products. And we're concerned it's going to increase. So right now they're not regulated. The chemicals, the flavors, it's out there, it's rampant, and it's very concerning to us.
So I feel like you don't need the state fair because you're playing with that whack-a-mole game every single day. You're
Every
just
day.
like
Every
trying to
day.
get every day, trying to fight it. Well, thanks for fighting it for all of our kids. I have one last question, which of course is a many-hour answer. But if we're sitting here right now listening and we have a kid who's addicted, now, years ago when this started, I asked that question. There was silence when you were going to be on a panel, and I was like, "Wait, nobody has solutions." But I think over time we have some things to offer up to parents. So, can you help parents who are dealing with that, dealing with a terrible addiction, right? It's really hard to break.
It's really hard. One thing is reach out to your pediatrician, adolescent medicine docs, family docs, talk to the physicians. Get them. Now, you can't, as a parent, you cannot get your kid tested for drugs over the age of 12. It's depending on what state you're in. You can't force the drug testing, but you can talk to your pediatrician and your family doctor and say, I'm worried that my kid is vaping. Can you have a conversation with them? Can you check? Can you talk to them? If your kid is addicted and they're admitting they're addicted, get them some help through your physicians. There are no nicotine replacement therapies patches that are approved or other medication approved for anybody under 18. But doctors are using them, and doctors are using them with success. The problem is we don't have the gold standard randomized control trials right now. So the FDA hasn't authorized them or approved them. But that doesn't mean that you can't get that help. I work with a lot of adolescent medicine docs and psychiatrists who have a lot of success. And it's generally a combination of therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and some sort of pharmacological agent like the patch if they're addicted. I mean, an e-cigarette has as much nicotine as 1 to 2 packs of cigarettes. And some addicted teens are using 1 to 4 pods a day, 1 to 4 e-cigarettes. That's 1 to 8 packs of cigarettes, depending on the math. So they may need that help. But there are also text lines, depending on the state you live in. My Life, My Quit is very successful. Full disclosure, I did help consult on creating that. I don't make money off of it, but full disclosure. But that's a really good one, very, very successful. The Truth Initiatives, I think it's This Is It. And then they also have Becoming an Act. So the Truth Initiative also has texting.
And the Truth Initiative, I think, was the first one to start. So by now they probably have some sophisticated help.
They do, and they have good data showing that it's really effective.
Oh,
So
good.
that's a really good one. 1-800-QUIT lines are very effective. Those are important. And also talking to young people, they're not going to quit overnight. Just like cigarettes, it's going to take several tries. And parents need to be supportive and patient. We have on our website the Healthy Futures, which is an alternative to suspension. We're actually opposed to schools suspending kids when they are caught using any substances. Then they just go home and vape more, and they laugh it off. They don't have a problem with that. And and this is affecting all kids, not just kids struggling in school or whatever. So suspending doesn't help. Do some sort of education. So we have our alternative to suspension, but you can also use that with young people who are using to get them to move towards quit. So there are other tools out there. We're actually starting a cessation clinic in the next few months in California, but we are. So
is it in person, the cessation clinic?
it's actually going to be telemedicine.
So someone can look that up right now. How would they find that?
No, unfortunately,
No?
you can, it won't start for at least a couple more months, but we're working on it. So if you're in California, you can email me, and I certainly can, put you in a queue that hopefully we'll get started on that fairly soon. But psychiatrists are very helpful. There are addiction medicine people. So yes, we don't have the smoking gun, the gold standard, but people can still get help.
I guess what I'm hearing is that you're not doing this on your own if you're a kid addicted. So
No.
you're going to need a lot of intervention. And Missy says, thanks for continuing this brutal fight. She's been dealing with this. So
I'm sorry to hear that.
yeah. And her kid doesn't agree that it's dangerous and doesn't care. Yeah. It's a tough one. Well, Missy, we wish you a lot of luck with your daughter, and she's lucky to have you. And Bonnie Halpern-Felsher, we're all lucky to have you. Man, do you make a difference in this space. Thanks so much. I'm so glad we met and we've kept up the relationship. And as new things come out, that you reach out and we can share them with our audience. So thanks so much.
Thank you for what you do as well. And thank you, parents out there,